Anger can be a really touchy subject for some people. We associate it with feelings of loss or lack of control. We call it a negative emotion. When we're thinking about anger, we might be tempted to think back on times that we've been angry and not liked ourselves in those moments, or been around people who were angry, either rightly or wrongly, and we realize that basically none of those memories are pleasant ones. But we also know that anger does serve some purpose. Nobody would voluntarily say, I never ever want to be angry again. There are right times and right ways to be angry. And in this way, anger is not a negative emotion. There really isn't a negative emotion, just a negative use of certain emotions. Actually, anger can be a really good thing if we govern it rather than allowing it to govern us. I looked up some ways that anger can be good, and they were pretty intuitive. I just looked them up on ChatGPT, and they kind of fell in line with basically how I think about it, and I'm sure you'll agree. Anger can provide emotional insight, meaning something's wrong. What is it? And it alerts us to when something is wrong, and so we can kind of deal with that thing. It can also increase focus and energy so that we're ready to face certain challenges. It can indicate a need for a change, or it can motivate us to change. It gives us that energy, and I guess this one is kind of a combination of the last two, but it's definitely important that it can motivate us towards the change that we need to see in our lives. It can also be a signal for injustice, and it can help us protect or set a boundary for either ourselves or others. So all of these things are good uses of anger. When we control our anger, when we feel angry, we can look at ourselves and ask ourselves why, and we can use that anger to bring about some positive things in our lives. So it's not a bad thing. It can just be used in a bad way, and does often get out of control because it can be hard to kind of maintain. Now, often skeptics to Christianity look at God, especially in the Old Testament, and they will level some accusations against him. They call him a harsh and angry and a vengeful God. And what's funny is that Christians who have a personal relationship with God kind of bristle at some of these accusations. They don't like the places that these accusations are coming from, and so they begin to defend God. And they're like, he's not angry, he's loving. Let me explain away some of those verses that you see him as angry in. You just don't understand. Now, to this I want to say it is true, because I need to kind of give this caveat a little bit. It is true that there are times where Bible critics take these accusations way too far. They're calling God angry and vengeful without actually looking at the context of the verse itself, and so they're just kind of cherry picking what they want and what they feel looks kind of aggressive or violent and saying, see, that's your God. They don't take the whole of the story, and I think this is a bad faith argument. But Christians, we should not be so bothered to accept the fact that our God is at times an angry God. This is not as bad a thing as we kind of think it is sometimes, because we often villainize or demonize anger. When someone calls God angry, we want to villainize or demonize that anger as well and kind of squash it, put it away, water it down, not embrace it for what it is. But this is actually a little bit inconsistent in our thinking. For example, when we watch superhero movies, I don't care if you're atheist or Christian, I don't care. We all want our heroes to be a little bit angry at the bad guy or at the thing that's happening that's wrong, because it shows that they're passionate about righting the wrong. It also shows us when they're angry that they're determined to kind of dig deep within themselves and overthrow the evil that we see that's present in the movie. And it shows that they love goodness and order. And so if they weren't angry to a certain degree at the bad guy, if they were just kind of like lackadaisical, like, well, it's probably fine, we would hate that movie. It needs to be that our superheroes are fueled by a passion to upend evil and do good. And there's a reason that we get that pride in our chest whenever we see this happen. That sort of swelling, noble feeling of like, yes, right is about to win again. We like that feeling. It's a good thing because we want to see wrongs be righted. We want goodness to win, and we're glad to see our angry hero take up the cause that we feel so strongly about in this movie. And we can get upset when the bad guy is allowed to like continue living, or he gets put in like some cushy prison that we know he's going to escape from just because they need a second or a third or a 15th movie. We're like, come on, have you not learned your lesson? This guy is evil. Take him out. Actually, often when the bad guy gets taken down, I'll fully admit this, I'll watch movies sometimes and I think, man, that guy barely got what he deserved. Like, he had a lot more coming to him and he got off really easy. And this bothers me. This actually angers me more than the superhero being angry about some injustice. We've seen this bad guy destroy things, destroy homes and cities. He has manipulated and tricked people into doing his evil bidding. He has killed people in cold blood. I mean, I'm not even talking about specific villain, but just like kind of the tropes of villains in general. And we've almost seen this guy win, and it bothers us. We get mad at this, and we want to see him pay. And sometimes this just doesn't happen. So often it doesn't happen, and we get angry at this. So why then, if in our superhero movies we want an angry superhero that upends the evil, that destroys the bad guy, and sometimes we get angry when they're not destroyed or they don't get what's coming to them, do we not do the same thing for God? Why do we get upset when we see God be angry in the Old Testament? Why, as Christians, when we're told you guys serve an angry God, do we want to water it down? Do we want to defend him as if his anger is wrong or evil somehow? Now, yes, again, those times that are a little bit confusing, we're like, I don't really know what's going on there. I mean, skeptics and atheists will pick parts of the Bible that you're like, honestly, that's a tough one for me. And you're going to find those, okay? Look into those verses for sure. Understand what's going on. Read into them. Try and understand. And if you can't quite grapple with it at that moment, put it on the shelf and wait a while, because you might gain insight later on. But for the most part, when God is angry, we should be able to look at it and not be in the dark about why that is. And we should be able to be on God's side with that anger, not try and, just kind of sweep it under the rug, because God has good reason for his anger. Now, especially when we hear certain prophecies, we hear some of the harshness of God come out towards certain people. He promises certain cataclysmic events and destruction, and these things sound really awful. They can actually scare us sometimes, thinking, man, God's like that. One example that I want to kind of walk through is in Amos. Now, Amos is a book of prophecy to Israel, more specifically Israel and Judah, and it also goes over judgment towards some of the surrounding nations of Israel and Judah. And Amos is so cool. I love him. I taught him at a Bible college a few years ago, and I just really fell in love with this book. But it's pretty intense. In Amos 1, it says, the Lord roars from Zion, and it says punishment is coming. So we know that this is going to be, some outworking of God's wrath going on. And you can picture Amos, this little shepherd kid from Tekoa, a little suburb of Jerusalem, going to the people, God's people, and being like, God has delivered judgment, and he is letting me know what he's going to do. To these foreign nations, he's going to do this horrible thing. To these foreign nations, he's going to be doing this horrible thing. And God's people get really roused and angry themselves, like, yes, finally, he's going to crush our enemies. Then, at the end of the prophecies against some of these nations surrounding Israel, he says, Israel, Judah, you were the worst of all. Harshest judgment is coming on you because you knew better and have also done evil. And then you can just see their crestfallen faces as they realize that this harsh God that they've been cheering on this whole time is now directed back at them. But in Amos 1 and 2, you get all of this judgment going on. To Damascus, he's sending fire and destruction, and they will go into exile. To Gaza, he's sending fire and destruction, and your people will perish. You're going to notice a little bit of a pattern here. To Tyre and to Edom, fire and destruction. Ammon, fire, destruction, your leaders will be overthrown. Moab, fire, destruction, your leaders will die. Judah, fire and destruction, you will not escape. Israel, fire, destruction, exile, oppression. Now, this truly does not sound like a pleasant and loving God. This is a section of Scripture that an atheist or skeptic or critic might point to and say, see, look at the God you serve. He's just ready to rain down judgment, to pour down fire and destruction on these cities. Is that really the God that you want me to believe is so loving and good and just? Yes, and here's why. Because he doesn't sound pleasant and loving until we remember why these things are coming upon the nations. Damascus, why fire and destruction? Because you have captured people into a slave trade and sold them to their nationalistic brothers. Gaza, you've committed genocide and enslavement of an entire people. Tyre, they delivered the enslaved nation over to the purchasing nation. Edom, you were the purchasing nation. You bought your brothers into slavery. These brothers whom you should have defended, instead you've purchased them from your enemies. They're absolutely evil. Ammon, you've ripped open pregnant women to overthrow and enlarge their borders. Moab, you have turned against your brother Edom, and you've burned their kings to ashes, denying them any remembrance in history or mourning from their family. Judah, you've broken God's law continually and also led others away from keeping it. Israel, you sell the righteous for silver, you trample the poor underfoot, you have sexual immorality running rampant among you, you belittle people's sacred vows, you have drunkenness in God's house, idolatry, and the list goes on. Israel has been horrendously evil, and so judgment is coming. What good person would not get angry at these things? While we listen to this prophecy and think, wow, man, God is so harsh, those who this judgment is coming on have torn apart people's lives. They have been inexplicably evil. And those people who have had to face them have been crying out this entire time, God, where are you? Are you not angry at those who tear me down? Won't you rescue me from them? And so when God roars from Zion and the people hear this, those who are oppressed rejoice because their hero is coming. These people needed an angry hero, an angry God, and they got one. And I bet they rejoiced when they got one. Just like we do when we watch those superhero movies and see the good guy come in to destroy the bad guy and save the day. We love when this happens. So we need to remember this applies to God as well. When he comes in to save the day, to save the oppressed, to save the poor, to save the hurting, to save those who have been murdered and slain in cold blood, we should rejoice at this. When other people say, you worship an angry God, remember, this is not so bad. I read this book recently that kind of informed this whole idea in my head. It's called Untangling Emotions. It was really good, and it talks a little bit about anger. And it says, we all love an angry advocate. And this is absolutely true. It's just our job to make sure that God is our advocate against those who would harm us and not someone else's advocate against us.